Um, I don't know how to start this. How do I start this? Think about it. Subscribe, like, follow. I'll have my socials in the description down below. So go access those if you want to see some of my art and things. But yeah, let's get into it. So Made in Abyss is the story of this giant hole, abyss, in which people do expeditions, kind of like Indiana Jones. People live around the abyss and this giant circular town. And in this town, around the hole, this young girl lives named Rico, and she loves the abyss. One day, she finds she's doing a little expedition, mini expedition that they let the kids do just for fun, in the upper layer where they can go in the hole to find some, pretty much all artifacts, but useless artifacts, to be fair. They find these little squishy things. I'll show that somewhere. She's doing a little raiding in that upper edge of the abyss, and she finds this little robot boy who she decides to take back with her to the orphanage. By the way, she lives in an orphanage, and then attaches like a bunch of technology to her, a bunch of wires and stuff, and then electrocutes him, shorting out the electricity in the orphanage. Of course, because this is a fantasy world, he is fine and actually comes back to life, and he joins Rico and the kids in, the orphanage. His name's Reg, by the way. She names him after a dog that died, because that's normally what you do. Reg, through the process of electrocution, has lost his memories, and has since joined the orphanage. And now that he's in the orphanage, he gets to hear all about Rico's fun and fanciful ideas about going into the abyss. Them going into the abyss is highly illegal, right? Because it's a death sentence. And as you'll see, it's an agonizing death sentence. So just to give you an idea of that, what the people of Orth call it is the curse of the abyss. Now, the curse of the abyss is very shitty. Essentially what it is, the deeper down you go, the worse you'll find coming up to be. So for the first layer or two really, coming up from the abyss will give you nausea, a lot of vomiting. You might pass out on the way back up, which, isn't fun. Really, that sounds pretty bad already, and it is. If you're a child, obviously it's worse for you. Some kids even seemingly get affected by it on the surface. That's more of a theory in the community, but I mean, it seems pretty logical. They'll pass out, and you can't wake them up unless they leave the city, go off the city. So, the abyss, the curse is stretching out a little bit to the top. But then, you go down to layers 3 and 4, you start to experience bleeding from all of your orifices. If you're a child, this could mean an excruciating death, because children have less blood. If you're an adult, you might not die, but you might come close. You'll definitely probably pass out from the pain of bleeding from everywhere. And you might be seeing some parallels to like the bends in real life from when you come up from diving, which is very true. It's very similar. But the one different thing is that if you come up from the 6th layer, which is close to the final layer, which is the 7th. The 6th is the one where if you go down, just a fun fact, they will never come for you, because it's impossible to come up from the 6th layer, because if you go up, you turn into a mass of weird animal parts that move. I will show a picture of it because it's gross and weird. And it's hard to explain. They call these creatures that you become hollows, because you're basically a human without a soul. Not even a human, you're a mass of sometimes tentacles and weird stuff. And this comes to a wonderful point of Made in Abyss, is that it's eldritch. Yay! If you know anything about eldritch things, which is just a fancy word for things involving weird horrors that come from like a cosmic plane, you'll know that it never ends well, and Made in Abyss is very much the same. This is not a fun story. You're dealing with death on pretty unprecedented scale a lot of the time. It's very nihilistic, but it's also very beautiful and loving. So Rico and Reg are going into the abyss, right? They know Reg, fun fact, he can't get affected by the curse of the abyss because he's a robot. So him and Rico go down. He also has these weird extendo arms. I've probably shown them a few times. So it makes it easy to traverse the abyss without extreme tools or cave raiding equipment, which they have. They have grappling hooks and things. But again, fantasy world, so they don't have a lot of things. But yeah, Rico and Reg pack a lot. They leave in a secluded area of the town and they go down into the abyss. Pretty easy getting past the first layer of the abyss. Pretty simple place, basically just a forest. There's a lot of weird animals and stuff, but for the most part, Rico's pretty used to it. They get past the first layer and get to the second layer, in which they find some of their first troubles with corpse weepers. These birds, well, I use bird very lightly because it's not actually really a bird. It's a giant flesh thing with huge eyes that are basically most of its face, and its beak, if you want to call it that, unfurls into a bunch of pointy little fucking protrusions. It sucks. I hate looking at it. But the corpse weeper has a very fun ability in that it can mimic people's voices when it's inside of their bodies. Great. Yes. Also, did I mention it travels in swarms? Swarms, not flocks, swarms. It sucks. It's huge. It's like half the size of a human. It's a terrible creature. I hate it. And half the size of a normal human. And Rico and Reg, remember, are the size of children because one of them is literally a child, human child. The other's a robot child. Whatever. The point is that they come across this thing. They think it's a person because it's inside of a person's body mimicking its voice. And then Rico runs and tries to save him. And then Reg, bless his heart, doesn't do much because he's kind of scared. So he just kind of sits behind, and Rico does a bit of the stuff. Then she gets captured because the corpse weeper discovers them naturally. And so Rico starts to vomit and passes out in the clutches of this creature. And just gets carried away while Reg has to take care of it. And he does, and they get safe. He gets scared because she's possibly dying because of this metaphysical force field that lives around them, but whatever. So they continue their journey past that. That's just the first thing that happens, mind you. Not to mention, I'll show a bit on screen. I think I'll get censored or whatever by YouTube. I still don't really know how that works, but I'll probably get taken down or whatever if I show it. So I'll just show kind of a blurred version of the body that the corpse weeper was in. It's pretty grotesque. Really good way to start a show about two kids going on an adventure, but it gets better. Don't worry, they keep going. They continue through the second layer and make their way to the forward camp of the abyss, the first one. I'm one of two where people actually live near full time at the very least in the abyss. The people who live there are made up of a few upper tier whistles and things like that, but the main selling point of this place is Orin the Immovable, who lives there full-time, and that's basically her stronghold. Fun fact about Orin, she's creepy, and also she knows Rico. Rico's mom happens to be a white whistle, and I say happens when I really mean happened, because she went down on her final cave raid to the bottom layer of the abyss. Rico, another fun fact, believes she's still alive because Rico's a very optimistic, fun-loving girl. Rico is like the best friend in the world. So yeah, her mom's a white whistle, and Orin traveled with her for a long time. And so Rico and Orin have a little heart-to-heart, a lot of fighting involved in that, almost dies because Orin's not the nicest person and doesn't get her points across very well, but she's good at heart, right? Look at her, doesn't she seem nice? She's really cool. So they get past that. She learns some, truths about herself and whatnot. They get through the third layer, which is just basically, classic hole. They call it the Great Fault. It's got a lot of nests and things on the side of it. It's just a hole with a bunch of holes in it. So that's cool. They get through there. They get to the fourth layer, right? Fourth layer, yay! Fourth layer is called the Goblet of the Giants, or Goblet of Giants, I think is how they say it. They're basically giant plants. I consider them fungi, but they call them plants. They're giant plants that hold a bunch of water in them, like they're giant pools. like huge pools. They're like hundreds of feet across. The shitty thing about the Goblet of the Giants is that it's the first place in Maiden Abyss. Well, I say the Great Fault is really the first place, but I think Goblet of Giants is where they really show it to you that they just can't return. Reg fights a crazy powerful monster who can read fluctuations in the Curse of the Abyss. And can like detect how you're gonna move, basically see the future in your fights. You just can't really fight him. Also shoots poison darts out of its back, super poisonous. Reg, it doesn't really matter too much because it can't really pierce his robot skin, but for Rico, guess what? She gets hit by one, and Reg, he takes her up, and guess what happens? She starts bleeding from the eyes, and so she starts to lose a lot of blood and die very quickly. And then her arm starts to swell because of the poison. Then she tells Reg in like a fugue state to cut off her arm. So he ties a thing around her and it gets really big and it's gross, and he tries to cut it off but he fails. Then this rabbit girl comes and saves them. Oh my god, it's crazy. And then she saves them and it's fine. Everything's fine, but it's creepy as fuck. It's a crazy scene. It sucks. I hate it. Back to Rico and Reg's fun journey through a death hole. They're in layer 4. They meet a fluffy bunny girl. Turns out she's a hollow, but hollows aren't necessarily all nearly dead humans. Some of them can become actual humans with weird kind of animal powers. The one who they meet, her name is Nanachi. She does become a main character. She can actually see the Curse of the Abyss floating around, so she knows where it is. It's not necessarily everywhere in the Abyss. It's just mostly everywhere. So there's areas that you can go up a little bit. So they keep going, and then this is where we get to Bondru in layer 5. This is the best part of Maiden Abyss that I'm going to talk about, because the best part of Maiden Abyss is new and you got to watch it for yourself. So layer 5, for starters, is essentially just an ocean. Oh, it sucks. It's probably my least favorite because you don't really see anything. It's just water. You know, there's a couple little islands and things, but the main section of layer 5 is the middle of it. The Edo front, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't matter. It's essentially an ancient ruin that Bondru has built his like laboratories into. And if you're wondering, no, it is not safe from the curse. So, you know, normal people going into it, like, he's built laboratories that go, like, stairways and things that go up. So he's super masochistic, and also, the word I can't remember for hurting people. He doesn't care if people die, Bondru. I'm going to show some pictures of him. He's just a weird looking dude. Doesn't really have a face, just kind of a metal hat, helmet, face covering, mask, that's the word. He wears a mask. I'm in 5th grade. He wears a mask that's made of metal. Turns out that's an artifact. Of course it is. Everything that Bondru has is pretty much an artifact from the Abyss. You can be sure of it. If it's weird looking, it's usually an artifact in Maiden Abyss. With Bondru, for starters, he's called the Sovereign of Dawn. His goal, essentially, from what we know of it, is to usher humanity onto its next age, usher the Abyss into its next age. He wants to evolve people, make, extreme scientific leaps and bounds. I think an important fact to understand with this is that the world of Maiden Abyss is not a highly magical one. I think the best example is something like Game of Thrones, right? Where a lot of the magic is centered around specific groups or families or things, and using it usually entitles like a heavy burden or cost, right? You know, it's not easy to get powerful in this world. Kind of the way that a lot of people get around that, however, is through technology. That is the main difference between a lot of fantasy worlds and Maiden Abyss, is that it has a lot of more like steampunk elements. They have like the weird like metal pipes everywhere, and I think a lot of things run off of coal and stuff. They got blimps and they don't like have airships, but they have like weird tree houses with piping and stuff, and Bondru is no different. The Edo front is filled with pipes of all sorts of shapes and sizes. He is a technological genius. He makes a lot of like testing stuff. A lot of the things that he makes do kind of come from the Abyss, like they're built based off of ideas he's found in the Abyss. So he is pretty advanced when it comes to traversing the Abyss. there's a lot of stuff I don't want to spoil with Bondru, so you know what? I'm gonna spoil it. So this is gonna be a spoiler warning for Bondru, for one of the second to most recent arcs in Made in Abyss. If you want to watch it, I highly recommend going to watch it. I know I'm shooting myself in the foot with this video, but I really love this show, and I'm gonna spoil the hell out of one of the best arcs in it. So you know, just move on if you're gonna watch it. So I mentioned earlier about the stresses of the curse on ascending from the 5th and 6th layers, right? So you become, just a refresh, you become a monster. You become a giant mass, a puddle of flesh and blood and a bunch of bodily fluids and just grossness. Teeth are in there too a lot of the time. Your body just morphs into an incomprehensible mess, right? And so Bondru has decided to kidnap children from other nations around the world, transport them to the Abyss, and he throws them into a tube, sends them down, and then sends them back up to see the effects of the final layer of the Abyss. Bondru's goal with this is to see if anybody can withstand it, and sadly for the world, Nanachi did, proving his hypothesis. And this is where a lot of the conflict of the Bondru arc kind of comes into play. Bondru loves Nanachi. Nanachi is his greatest success. He sees her as an incredible work of art. A lot of his speeches are about how he would never want to hurt her. He would never do anything to her friends, even though I'm going to show some scenes proving that's a lie. He actively goes after them, fighting them at pretty much every turn. And he proves at the end and throughout a lot of it that he would even hurt her, because if it means progress, if it means that he can push things further, then it's worth it. Bondru is not the typical like shonen hurdle where like the characters are beating him and then they're gonna like become some like ultra uber strong version of themselves. If anything, they become a little weaker afterwards because of how strong he is. Bondru is the kind of hurdle that you barely get over. Bondru takes everything they have. The only reason that they win the fight is because of clever planning on their part. It's scraping by for them. But a lot of it is more than anything teaching the characters about death and the reality of what it means to truly traverse the Abyss. Because to get past Bondru, they have to trample a bunch of child corpses. And Rico and Nanachi and Reg do struggle with that. But that's like the thing with Made in Abyss, is that it's just like it's all so messed up and it's all so beautiful. It's trampling over the corpses of children to see the beauty at the end of the world. I think that makes sense. I don't know. Like and subscribe. Please. Also, if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. I want to hear about it. I don't know how well this is going to go in the editing room. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Kind of just me rambling for my first video, but I think that it is... I like this. I like this format. It lets me get things out. So if you like this, I've seen other people do it on YouTube before. Obviously, I'm not the first, but if this works for me, let me know. That's kind of a shitty way to put that, but yeah. Have a good one, guys. And yeah, I'm losing it. I'm losing it, bro. I'm in my look at me. I'm in pajama pants, dude. You want to see something cool? You want to see something cool? I was holding the mic away. I don't think you could hear that. Let me show you. Let me.